And so I am now going to hand you over to Jason Tondro, and I'm going to rest on my laurels while he says brilliant things.
Hello, everyone. My understanding is you're all about to make an adventure. Is that right?
Yes.
I sent Sarah a video with some advice on how to do that and a little summary of kind of my career and how I got to do what I got to do. I think that's been available to you. Have you been able to, some of you have been able to see it? I see a few people nodding. Okay.
Yeah, I think some of them have, and not everybody knew to go to the game page ahead of the game
Oh,
jam
sure,
page.
sure. Well, I'm Jason Tondro. I'm a senior designer on the Dungeons and Dragons team. I've been here for a couple of years. I did the Deck of Many Things box set and the recent making of original Dungeons and Dragons hardback. It's like a 600-page, big, fat, red hardback. If you've seen that in the game store. Before that, I spent about 4 years at Paizo working on the Pathfinder and Starfinder role-playing games. I see a few people nodding your heads there. You know those games. And I was there as an editor and as a developer and then as a senior developer. I also freelanced for Paizo because that's what you do there. When the pay is not good, you work your ass off by night to pay rent and buy sandwiches. So I did a lot of freelancing, writing adventures, and contributing to various hardback books for those. And before that, I was a college professor, like Professor Einstein. I taught English and film and comics at a small college in Georgia, the College of Coastal Georgia, smallest school in the Georgia state system. And I did that for about 5 years. And I took my PhD before that. We're going backwards in time. This is the Wayback Machine now. I took my PhD at the University of California, Riverside in medieval and Renaissance literature, where I studied superhero comics and basically everything from Chaucer to Milton, about 1,000 years of British lit. That may sound like a weird introduction to game design, but you know, the guy who created Ultima Online and Star Wars Galaxies, when he was asked what's the best training for becoming a game designer, he said a liberal arts education is the best training for becoming a game designer. And I think that might not be true for computer game design anymore because there's wonderful programs like the program that we're hoping to create at your college for game design. But maybe for tabletop role-playing games, which is what I do, I think that might still be true. I've worked with people here at Wizards from all kinds of different backgrounds. There's no one way to get to do what I do. We have internships. We work with people that have interned with us for 1, 2, sometimes 3 years. But we also have people that have come here from education or from the computer gaming field. A lot of them work their way up by freelancing and writing for the game as freelance contributors, and then that got them a reputation as somebody who can do the work and on time and is pleasant to work with, right? Those are kind of the three things that we always look for in a freelancer: is can you do the work? Is your work good? Can you do it on time? And are you pleasant to work with? And we'll basically take 2 out of 3, right? So if your work is really good and you do it on time, it's okay if you're a bit of a jerk. And if your work is really good and you're really nice, then it's okay if you're late. And if you're always on time and you're really pleasant, it's okay if your work's not so great, right? And that's kind of our policy on freelancing.
We would all like to know which one of those you are.
So when I started at Paizo, I was absolutely the guy whose work was not very good, but who was always on time and really pleasant to work with. That was absolutely who I was. But as time has gone by, I like to think that my work has gotten better. But you know, that's kind of up to the readers and the players to ultimately decide. Anyway, so I was a college professor and I dropped all that and started in game design because I had been freelancing as a game creator for about 20 years. And it was not my degree that got me an interview at Paizo. It was my list of 40 freelance credits, right? Where I had written or been an editor or been an art director or otherwise assisted in the creation of a bunch of games which we have published third party, small press. These were very humble projects. Like they would sell like 50 or 100 copies. Like they were not flying off the shelves. They were not winning any awards. They would go up on Drive-Thru RPG or something like that, if you know what I'm talking about, like an online gaming marketplace. And we would sell them as PDFs or print on demand. Very small projects. But by doing them, you learn the job. You learn what to do. And I made a lot of them, mostly just for fun. Like I didn't pay my rent with any of that stuff. But when it came time to enter the business as a career, those credits showed the people at Paizo, the publisher Eric Mona, for example, or my manager Judy Bauer, that I could do the job. Right? I'd learned the hard way. It's kind of like how a stand-up comedian spends 10 years doing lousy clubs and bars, and then suddenly they suddenly become famous, right? And it's basically what I did, except instead of a stand-up comedy, I was writing role-playing games. It's the same idea. But listen, I can go on and on, but what I really love to do is do any of you have questions or things that you want to know about this industry or about how to get into it or how to do it or about your upcoming project or if you have questions, I would love to answer them. I'm really here for you folks.
Yes.
Sarah will have to repeat your question because I can't hear a thing.
I'm going to ask you after every phrase to let me, or do you want to come up here? If
Good.
you have questions,
Good.
up here, you can ask them into the microphone. Get on the
Yeah,
tape.
if you have questions, come on up. Tell me who
Or
you are.
raise
Tell
your
me about
hand and I
yourself.
will repeat them. And give us your name.
Yeah.
Hi. You can hear me, right?
I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you. Hi.
Stand in front of the camera when you leave and wave.
Yeah, you're all good. You're all good.
I'm Taylor Grisham, and I was wondering, after you get out of college, let's say your only work experience is retail,
Yes,
what is the
yes.
first step to get into this type of career?
Yes. Okay, first off, I worked retail for years. I ran a bookstore, so I get it. And I worked every Christmas. Hi, I worked every Christmas, so I hear where you are coming from. We are alike in this. Your question is a great one. You do not need to wait for anybody else to publish your books. There are a lot of role-playing games out right now, and D&D is just one of them, where the rules are open, either open license, some kind of Creative Commons, public domain. The rules are available to you, and you do not need to ask anyone's permission to make products for that game. Start small. Make like a 6-page, 8-page PDF, right? Learn the rules for the open license. You'll probably have to include like an open license document at the end of your PDF. And then create something small. Create an adventure. Make a monster. Make a subclass that you like, or make some spells, or whatever. You really can't go wrong with a simple one-night adventure. And then publish it yourself. You can learn to do the graphic design, or you can hire somebody who's also learning and available and within your budget to do it. This is what I did. I did not learn graphic design. I hired a friend for $50 to do graphic design on my 8-page PDF, right? And then you make it yourself, and then you put it up on Drive-Thru RPG and you start selling it. Now, it's not going to sell a lot. It's not going to sell a lot of copies. That's not the point. The point is to teach you how to do the job. And then when you finish, do it again. And just keep putting out these small products and building up a larger manuscript and building up your own skills. The first mistake a lot of folks make is they try to build something big. They try to do like a magnum opus, right? I'm gonna make a fantasy world, or I'm gonna make like a whole new role-playing game. Those 200-page manuscripts are very difficult to complete when you're doing it on your own as a second job, basically at home, right? As a side gig. That start small, create something small. And then if it's successful or you like it, you can build something else that adds on to it. So if you make a level 1 adventure and it's an 8-page PDF or 10 pages, Now you can make a level 2 adventure and it's another 10 pages, right? And you keep doing this and you learn how to do the business. And then when you start applying for freelance gigs at publishing companies, RPG companies, you can show them, so you can send them one of your PDFs and you can show them that you know how to do the job. Ultimately, this is what it's about. You want to be able to show people in the business that you know how to already do the job. And you're not going to go to Wizards from scratch, right? You're going to go to other companies along the way. There's a lot of people making D&D products, for example, and you can pitch your stuff to them and you can find out who hires, who does the freelancing contracts assignments at those companies, right? And you know, if you can go to a con and you can network and you can literally just ask them, like, okay, I want to freelance for you guys. Who do I talk to, right? And then you can get emails and you can get phone numbers and you can send these people copies of things that you have already made and you can show them that you have done the work, that you know how to do it. And then you can start working your way up, right? Even at Paizo, we usually didn't hire people straight off that had never published in the game industry before. We would hire people that had already done work for other companies, right? So start small, create your own PDFs, publish them yourself, and then use those to build a resume that you can then use to get freelance work from larger publishers. That's what I would do.
All right. So if you have a question, please come up. I will say, as a college student, I would have died before I'd come to the front of this room because I was so. You may also, if you have a question, email me.
Yes.
It's sarah-einstein@utc.edu. So Sarah Einstein at utc.edu. And I will ask your question for you. And one of you already figured I would probably do that and sent me an email. So
Excellent.
I have a question.
Good.
When you are deciding whether or not an idea is a good idea,
okay,
what are the steps that you go through in deciding whether or not an idea that you have, particularly for something as large as, say, a module, is going to be a good idea?
Well, one option that you have, especially with an adventure, is to test it. If you can get 4 or 5 people together and you can play the adventure with other people, you will quickly find out if your idea is any good or not, right? And your players will push it and poke it and take you in other directions. And nothing will help you more to be a good game designer than to actually play the game that you are trying to design for. That sounds really obvious, but you would be shocked at how many people in the business no longer play. They don't have time. They're working really hard. It's hard to find a group. Like a lot of us, we want to play, but we just can't seem to find the time. I have been both sides of this. I have been the person that writes but doesn't play, and I have been the person that writes and plays a lot. I'm fortunately to be in that camp right now. I have like 4 games ongoing every week, right? But that was a conscious effort. That was something I resolved to do because it helped me be better at my job and also along the way made me some new friends, right? but you have to try, you have to make an effort to do that. Like especially after COVID, like all of us just want to just hide in our apartments and never come out, right? Like I get it. So make an effort. So that's one answer to that is test it out if you can. Another possible thing is just try to write it. Like write your way through this, you know, like there's that famous Hamilton bit from the musical. Like you're going to write your way out of it. And if you start to write the thing, you can, I know this is a muscle. You'll develop it with practice. The more you do it, the more you'll figure out, you'll get a sense of what's going to work and what's not going to work. But I want to end with some different advice from Lou Hunter. Lou Hunter is a screenwriter. He taught at UCLA. He wrote a book called Screenwriting 431, which was his textbook for many, many years. And Lou Hunter firmly believed that ideas are not as important as we think they are, that we tend to think like every idea is some kind of jewel. Look, anybody can get an idea. You have ideas. I have ideas. My grandmother has ideas. My dog probably has ideas, right? Especially if it's about peanut butter or bacon. But what really differentiates a writer, a creator, is not their ability to come up with an idea, but their ability to execute on that idea and turn it into a finished product. Okay, it's easy to sit back and come up with ideas, but can you write the manuscript? Can you deliver it on time? Can you finish? Right? That's what it's really about. Ideas are easy to come by. Ideas are cheap. Finishing your manuscript is the difference between a professional and an aspiring professional.
And a really great way to learn how to finish your writing on time is to sign up for a creative writing workshop.
Absolutely true. And like I said before, start small. Like just write, know that you're only going to do a little thing. Like I'm going to create an adventure for one night, one session. 3 or 4 hours of gaming is not that much. There's just not that much you can do. I mean, think about it for a minute. How many people are at your table? Let's say you have 4 people at your table. How long does a combat last? If you're fighting a bunch of orcs, how long does that last in D&D? We design monsters here in the office to die in 3 rounds. Monsters are designed to die in 3 rounds. Okay, so you've got 3 rounds of combat. You have 4 players at the table. If it takes you 10 minutes to do a single round of combat, that means you spend half an hour on a single fight. If you have 4 combats in the night, that's 2 hours of your game session just spent fighting. Not even counting exploration and role play and all the interruptions that come along with games, right? Like, all kinds of things happen. And people are just having fun playing their characters and telling a story. If your adventure has 4 combats in it, like some sort of skill challenge, something that involves like, non-combat, but it involves dice to resolve, like a complicated trap or negotiating something with an NPC. And then it's got like, and that's probably enough for you to fill an entire session of play. And even that players might not finish, depending on how experienced they are or how much they're into how much they like the dice roll. You can design. Go ahead, Sarah.
No, please finish.
You can design 4 encounters and a trap and like an optional encounter that the players might have to deal with but might be able to avoid. And that's it. That's all that you need. And you can make one adventure out, one session of gameplay. You can fill a night with that. Start small and then get more and more and more. Build on it as you get experience and as your muscles get better at it, right?
Our next question
comes
from a special guest, Professor Angelique Gibson, excuse me, from the communications department.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, good.
And Professor Gibson has been in my Dungeons and Dragons group since we were in graduate school together.
Outstanding.
At Ohio University.
Yes.
She is one of our judges for the contest.
Good.
And her class, screenwriting, is one of the classes that you guys can take as part of the narrative design minor. So Angelique, take it away.
Okay, so I'm all about being future-proof, and I was wondering if AI is like something we should think about when we're building like our modules, or where that might be changing the industry just to be able to compensate for it.
This is a great question. So first off, I think we have to be thinking about AI, even if we ultimately decide that we don't want it in the industry. Like it's everywhere. It would be foolish of us to not think about where we want AI to feature or not feature. Like if we don't think about it, the decision will be made for us, right? So let's think about it. Now, first off, I want to clarify that Wizards does not use AI in the creation of any of our final documents. We have strict rules for freelancers and in-team designers that all of our products are made by people for people. So our artists don't use AI, our game designers and our writers do not use AI. And that is a decision that we get to make as a studio. Hasbro, who owns Wizards, has given that authority to the individual teams to decide if they are or are not going to use AI. And the D&D vice presidents have agreed that the answer is no. So that's where D&D sits on AI. That said, looking at the RPG tabletop role-playing game hobby more broadly, I think, first off, let's acknowledge that lots of players use AI already all the time. Like players will create AI art for their characters, or they'll create like a background for their character, and they'll put a prompt into an AI and they'll get it through ChatGPT or whatever. So let's just acknowledge and accept that that's already happening. I think that there's kind of two different paths for AI in tabletop game design. One of those is as a DM assistant. That is, the AI keeps track of what's going on in your game so that the DM doesn't have to think about all that stuff. So it might even like monitor the combat. We just talked about how, a combat lasts 3 rounds. You got 4 players, and someone's like, okay, I attacked the orc. What'd you roll? I rolled a 14. Okay, that hits, roll damage. If the AI could track how many hit points the orc has, it could then tell me, oh, that orc is dead. I'm like, great, right? Like if I had an AI assistant to kind of keep track of all that stuff, so that I didn't have to track hit points and initiative. I can let the AI tell me whose turn is next, right? It's like, it's Eric's turn. Okay, great. Eric, what do you want to do? Right? Like that kind of a DM assistant AI feels very useful to me personally as a player and DM. The second kind of use of AI is more of a holy grail. And I think that is the idea of replacing the DM entirely with an AI, where the AI makes the adventure or it guides you through an adventure that's already been created. I'm not certain we want that. I know I, as a player, wouldn't want that. But I think that for corporate production reasons, there's a lot of reasons for the industry to want that. Without spending a whole half an hour here on means of production, we have to remember that the way a game is made has a tremendous influence over the final result of the game itself. The process of creating the game is in many ways determinative of what the final game is like. Now, what do I mean by that? D&D is like, let's imagine 5 players. 4 of them are players and 1 of them is the DM. If Wizards of the Coast puts out a book that's designed for players, like let's say the Forgotten Realms Player's Guide, which is one of my current projects, right? That I'm working on right now, like literally today. And that has a bunch of subclasses and new feats and new spells, and it's designed for players. We want every player to buy one. Okay, that book's gonna fly off the shelves. But if I make an adventure or a book aimed at DMs, which is my other current project, the Forgotten Realms Adventure Guide, a 280-page book aimed at DMs, suddenly my audience for that book has shrunken from 5 to 1, right? The pool of customers is 20% of the other book's potential. And to a corporate publicly traded company that has stock and annual forecasts, that's a bad investment. Like that's a bad idea to make that book. Wizards should not make adventures because they don't sell as well as player-focused books. So we should put out endless versions of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which was a player's book. And we should stop making adventures like Dragonlance, Shadows of the Last War, because only 1 out of every 5 D&D players could possibly buy it. Well, what if we got rid of the DM so that the DM was a computer and everybody's a player? And now we don't have to make DM books because AI can do it, right? And every book that we make is for players. And wouldn't that make it easier for players to find a group then? Because they wouldn't need to find a DM. DMs are notoriously hard to find. And if you lose your DM, your group falls apart. And if you're a single person and you want to play D&D, but you're by yourself, what do? Like, you can't play the game. You can make a character, but you can't play the game. Well, what if what if an AI DM could give you a way to play the game? And now everybody can play. And you don't need a group. And you don't need to buy DM books. So this is from the production side, from the financial elements of what makes a viable publishing company. There's a lot of reasons to try to make an AI fill the role of the DM. But it undercuts what the way that the game functions, right? Like it undercuts the real value and the heart and the soul of the game, because now you're no longer interacting with a human being. You're just talking to a computer. And it takes away the creativity and the social connection value of role-playing games. This is something that we often overlook and we undervalue, I think. We all play games for different reasons, but one of the big reasons to play a game is because, a lot like ours, like D&D, is because it's just social interaction. It's a way to hang out with your friends around a table. And in many ways, the game is irrelevant. It's really just an excuse for you to sit down at a table with your friends. But if you don't need to do that, well, then you might as well be playing your PS5, right? And that's what an AI would do. Bringing an AI would transform D&D from being a group activity into being an activity where you stare at a screen and talk to a computer for 3 hours instead of sitting with your friends and sharing a pizza. And I think that would be a great mistake.
I agree. And I was going to say, and Professor Gibson's husband is our DM, so I feel absolutely certain she does not want him replaced with AI.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And so we now are getting a good, healthy line. It seems like the social stigma about coming up to ask questions is broken.
Excellent.
So I'm going to keep going. But if at any point, Jason, you need to say, hey, this has been great, but now I have to go back to work, please let us.
I have half an hour. I have half an hour.
Great. All right. So our next question comes from Aria.
Hi there.
Hello.
Speaking as someone with all too many ideas and all too little time,
Yeah.
how exactly do you decide what is worth putting into, I don't know, a book, for example, or what is worth bundling with
This kind of, this goes back to the previous question, like how do you know if your ideas are any good? First off, I want to say that this idea, like this notion, this feeling, like I'm coming up with these ideas, but are they any good? Imposter syndrome is real. We all feel it at every level of this industry. Like when I came here to Wizards, I was surrounded by people that are legends in this industry that have been working on this game for 20 years. Like I'm 2 feet from Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford and James Wyatt. Like these people are giants, right? And I'm like, any minute now they're going to realize I'm a complete fake. So that's very normal to doubt your own ideas and your own value. But the way to work through this is to work through it. It's a matter of experience and practice, and you don't need to share your stuff with anybody until you're ready. But don't let that stop you from putting fingers to keyboard and actually creating a manuscript. As far as like figuring out like, well, is this worth putting in a project? Maybe my best advice on this is think about your audience. Like, who are you writing it for? And imagine that. Remember that I'm going to go off into professor land for a minute here. In 1603, Queen Elizabeth was dead. And in Shakespeare's England, you could not be an actor without a patron. Like somebody had to be signing off your checks for you to be an actor in London. And Shakespeare and his acting company looked at the incoming king, King James, and they thought, well, we want him to be our patron. And Shakespeare, like, okay, well, what do we know about this guy? Well, we know that he's from Scotland. We know that he has an infamously short attention span. He likes to watch fighting and like parades and pageants and, mock fights. And he wrote a whole book about how to hunt and kill witches. Well, so what did Shakespeare do? He wrote his shortest play with the most fights in it about a king from Scotland who meets witches, right? I mean, if it's good enough for Shakespeare, it's good enough and it worked. And it worked. He writes Macbeth and King James becomes his new patron of his acting company. Remember your audience. Remember who you're writing it for and write for them, right? And if it's good enough for Shakespeare, it's good enough for us.
And I want to say one of the classes in the minor that you have to take, about the only one that's not directly related to making games, is Shakespeare. Because,
good.
because writing games is essentially 21st century dramaturgy. So we're going to teach you those skills.
It's writing a game. Can I just go off for a minute here? Forgive me.
You can always.
Writing a game is very different. It's very interesting because you don't create the protagonists of the story as the designer, right? The players are the protagonists. And so you create the villain and they have a story, but you can never guide that story too closely. You have to give the tools. You're really creating the tools for the story. And you're giving all of these tools to the DM and sharing all of the information with them so that they can make the story come to life. In many ways, you're not the director. You're creating the materials to give to the director. And this can be a hard shift for a lot of writers because we want to control the story. We have this vision of how it's all going to play out in our head. But that's not what role-playing games are. Role-playing games are about letting the players have important choices that have consequences and letting those players make those choices so they get ownership of the game. This is a real challenge. And it shows up the alienation between role-playing games and other media like television and film shows up when Hollywood comes to us. They come to Wizards and they say, we want to make a movie about your character, about your game. Who are the heroes of D&D? And we're like, there aren't any. The heroes of the game are made by the players. We can give you bad guys, but we can't create your heroes for you. And that's why you get Honor Among Thieves, the last D&D movie, where villains like Sastam, who are part of D&D and have been in D&D for 40 years, show up in the movie, but the heroes are all brand new, created by Hollywood because we didn't have any heroes to give them, right? That is maybe the big difference between writing for a role-playing game and writing fiction or writing prose or writing a play or writing a screenplay. And I want to say, like, I'm so glad that you have Shakespeare on the curriculum because Storm King's Thunder, we put out a hardback adventure. It's like a 200-page adventure for D&D called Storm King's Thunder, and the plot is totally stolen from King Lear. Right? We have an adventure in Quest for the Infinite Staircase called The Crystal Cave, the plot of which is totally stolen from Romeo and Juliet. Okay? These stories are foundational. And in Shakespeare, you will learn language, and you will learn pacing, and you will learn characterization, and you will learn once again, we're going back to Ralph's argument about the best training for a game designer, and that is a broad liberal arts education. So kudos.
All right, our next question is from Christopher.
Good.
Hey, am I coming through all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
So you touched on this a little earlier, but I was just wondering, what's your process that you go through when trying to create an interesting and challenging monster?
Creating a monster? Well, the first thing that we decide in the office when we're creating a monster is what challenge rating do we want it to be? Okay. And that sounds like a silly thing to start with, but it's important because under the hood, the mechanics of the game, challenge rating determines a lot. Like there are things that low-level monsters cannot do, but high-level monsters can. And there's expectations of what the players can do. So for example, if you introduce a monster, something simple, like a monster that can fly. Well, at low levels, the players can't fly. So at that point, all they can do is sort of shoot it with their bow, right? Or use ranged spells on it. And some of the players at your table are probably going to feel kind of bored and like they can't do anything because they can't fly into the air to meet the monster. Once they hit level 5 and the wizard gets the fly spell, that's no longer a problem, right? So you can make all the flying monsters that you want. This illuminates one of the challenges about one of the things to keep in mind when you're making a monster. It's not about beating the players. Like, the point is not to make a monster that's tough enough to kill everyone. Anybody can do that. You're God. You can make you make the monster as tough as you want. But is the monster interesting and fun to fight? Right. Now that's different. That's a different story. How does it play out? So, for example, many DMs will say, well, I'll make a monster and he's really tough. He's just really hard to kill. Well, what you've now done is you set yourself up for a very long encounter, because at the character's triumph, you've just strung that encounter out into a very long time period as they slowly whittle this monster down a little bit by a little bit by a little bit. Well, that sounds, frankly, kind of boring. Instead, what our game does, and this is different for every game, but for our game, we had that 3-round rule where we build the monster to die in 3 rounds. And so rather than making it really tough to kill, we'll give it a really cool and distinctive attack. If your monster's only going to live for 3 rounds, well, then give it like one cool thing that will make it memorable, right? Like, give it like the one cool ability. It jumps into combat, it gets to use its one cool thing, and even if the players defeat it pretty quickly, they'll still remember it for that one cool thing it got to do, right? If you look at the monster manual that came out in 2014, and then compare it to the monster manual that's currently in progress and will come out early next year, you'll see that a lot of monsters got like a new action or a new reaction or some new special ability that they can do. It doesn't actually make them any more dangerous. It just makes them more interesting than a giant sack of hit points, which is what they were, right? So you take an animal like a bear, and it's just a big sack of hit points with like a claw bite attack. And there's 100 monsters like that in the monster manual. Well, what if we just give it like one interesting or distinctive trait? Just give it something it can do. Maybe it's got a demoralizing roar that intimidates people or makes them run away. Or it's got, whatever. Maybe its armor, its claw strike is so heavy that it can tear armor off of your body and reduce your armor class. Just give it something, just so it has like one chance to do something cool before it dies. Because that's honestly probably the description for most monsters in D&D. Right? It's going to have a chance to do one cool thing before it dies in 3 rounds.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Jose.
Okay.
So I was just wondering, how would you go about creating NPCs on the fly for a party to
Oh,
interact?
okay, great. I'm so glad you bring this up, because this is a real problem. Like, what you find out when you DM with someone when you DM with someone for a long time is that they have like trope characters that they go to all the time, right? So like in my case, I would have like this potboy character, and no matter what game I was running, you could bet that inevitably at some point the potboy would show up, right? I have really found that helps me is some kind of randomized or physical prop. Now, this is going to sound like I'm plugging my own game, but I swear to God, I'm not. There's a million ways to do this, but the Deck of Many Things has a 66 card deck. And each of those cards has a distinctive visual, has a name and a cool art on it. And in the Book of Many Things that comes along with it, it ascribes to each of those cards a kind of person, as well as a monster and a kind of treasure and a situation, like a problem, a conflict that the players have to solve. And I ran a game at San Diego Comic-Con just a few months ago, back in the summer. And I just had a stack of the Deck of Many Things here on my table. And as they met characters, I would turn over the deck and I would use the card that got turned over to inspire the character that whatever NPC I needed them to make. Now, there are a million ways to do this, but what I'm doing, my point here is something to break me out of my standard habits of the same NPCs I always create, my sort of go-to characters, right? And you can build your own deck. You can customize it however you want to. So, get some magic cards, for example, and pull out cool art for characters that you think might be interesting and build a magic deck of cool NPCs. And then when the players are walking around town and they walk into a shop or they walk into a tavern, you can just draw 3 cards real quickly and populate that tavern with cool characters.
Thank you. All right, our next question is from Bernard.
Hey, Bernard.
Hey, so as you were speaking about earlier with the AI
Yeah.
conversation, this is more regarding kind of the future of TCRPGs in general.
Sure.
So I remember hearing a while ago that Wizards was trying to develop their own virtual tabletops and like Roll20, Foundry,
Yeah.
Tales, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was wondering is what would be the main plan to see that people would be using the official uh VTT rather than something else with that you can just import other things from what the mods on Foundry that just lets you import things from D&D Beyond into the actual VTT.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so a little bit of table setting for folks. So there's all these virtual tabletops. Roll20 is one of them. Foundry is another one. Foundry is one that I've used a lot, especially when I was playing Pathfinder, because its Pathfinder support is really good. Wizards of the Coast is building a virtual tabletop. It's called Project Sigil. It's actually in beta testing right now. I'm not revealing anything that's a secret. It's relatively well known. We've talked about it on D&D Direct, and you can even see videos of it in action. But to address your concern, there is no plans to enforce the use of a particular virtual tabletop over any other. Your question was, how is Wizards going to make sure that you only use the official VTT? The answer is, we're not. Instead, we're trying to make the virtual tabletop so good, so amazing, so mind-blowing that you will want to only play on that. But there are no plans. And in fact, I don't even know if it could be enforced because D&D is now part of a Creative Commons license. It is the rules to D&D have been released to the universe forever. There is no legal way to pull those rules back or that legal permissions back. And so if Roll20 wants to use D&D on Roll20, no power on earth can stop that from happening. So rather than trying to force people to play a particular way, we are instead trying to just be better than everyone else so that you want to play on our system. But my personal suspicion is that people will continue to use all kinds of different virtual tabletops because they're all different and they have different advantages and assets. Project Sigil is a very high immersive, like super grand deluxe VTT. When I run D&D games online, I don't need that shit. I need like a whiteboard and a marker. Like that. My needs for a virtual tabletop are extremely simple. And I can use like, what's the owlbear one? Owlbear Rodeo. I can use Owlbear Rodeo to do that. And the learning curve, I can tell players everything they need to know about how to use this in like 2 minutes. So my hunch is that these VTTs will each find like a niche, like what is a thing that they're good at, and players will gravitate towards the VTT that fits their personal desires. Wizards has no intention no plans for trying to corner the VTT market.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to do one question from the email because we now have enough questions that I don't think we'll get through them all, and I don't want the email people to get left out.
Hit me.
Madison asks, what does a typical day look like at work for you?
Okay, that's a great question. So back in the pre-COVID era, we all were in the office all day, right? But now, thanks to COVID, our Wizards is completely hybrid, and Paizo has completely closed its offices and is a completely online company now. So Paizo works from home, and Wizards is hybrid, which means you're home most of the time, but occasionally have to come into the office for particular things. My typical day involves me writing or developing about 1,000 words of material for whatever project I'm on right now. So right now, for example, I'm writing material for the Calimshan chapter of the Forgotten Realms Adventure Guide. This is a kind of Turkey-inspired fantasy Turkey inspired setting, which we have drastically rewritten to make it more contemporary and less stereotypical and kind of cliched. And so I hired a freelancer, a professor of Islamic and Arabic culture at Ohio State University, to write about half of this chapter. And she turned that material in a couple of weeks ago. And now I am developing that. And what I mean by a developer is kind of like a hard edit, where you go in and you don't just edit to fix mistakes, but you rewrite anything that is missing and you fill in stuff, because the freelancer is not here in the office. They don't know everything that we need. They just don't know the process. And they might be a new writer who hasn't written a lot in the RPG industry. And so they need more support and more scaffolding. And so as a part of my job is to come in and develop that text and make it better, make it do everything that I need it to do in that chapter. And also to correct any miscommunications that might have happened between me and the freelancer on the assignment, which is more common than you think. So Sharani wrote like a section, like she wrote the gazetteer sections on the land of Kalimshan and on the city of Kalimport, which is kind of like fantasy Istanbul. And then I'm coming in and writing the adventure section, where I'm creating one-page adventure outlines. This is a format that's pioneered for in the new Dungeon Master's Guide that comes out in, I think, a couple of weeks. It's a one-page adventure with all of the really critical information that you need on one page. So it's got like, okay, here's the problem, here's how the player characters get involved, here's the encounters for the adventure, and then here's a half-page map. For most DMs that run games, that's as much work as we do for one night's play. We have a basic map, we know what the encounters are going to be, and we invent the rest. We make up the rest as we go. And so that format, that one-page adventure format, I'm writing those right now, today. And then in addition to that 1,000 words of writing or developing, I have a couple of meetings, which I can do in the office, but I could also do from home online. I am getting requests from my art director because I submitted art orders. An art order is when you describe an interior piece of art that's going to be in the book. And as project lead, I write the art orders for every piece of art in my projects. So I describe what the art is, and I submitted about a month ago, I submitted about half of the art orders for my current projects, because I'm running 2 books right now, the 200-page player's guide and the 280-page adventure guide. And I submitted about 150 art orders to my art director. And she is writing back, asking for clarifications and questions on some of them. Like, okay, this art order is supposed to depict this new subclass. Well, what can that subclass do so that we can accurately depict that subclass in art? And my answer is, that's a very good question. And I don't know, because that subclass is still being written, right? So I'm answering questions from other people on other teams. The editors, my editor, for example, has been editing another chapter of the adventure guide on the Moonshae Isles or Dale Lands, and they have a bunch of questions about things in the manuscript that they're uncertain about, that they want to change, but they want to make sure that that's right. So they have a bunch of questions ready for me, and we might sit down and talk about those and walk through those, or they might just send those questions to me and I answer them on my own time. I've met with 2 writers today, people on my design team, talking about their current assignments in the book and what I'd like to see, and just kind of touching base, make sure that we're all on the same page. I'm a big oversharer on my projects. I like to have a lot of talking between the people on the team so we're all kind of on the same page. And although I come into the office most days because I live literally half a mile from work. So I come into the office for about half the day, and then I go home and I work the other half from home. That's kind of my day.
Thank you. And we have one last question, since we want to be respectful of your time.
Oh,
Timothy,
sure.
come on and ask your question.
Okay, so hey there, I'm Timothy.
Hey.
I was just wondering, so when it comes to writing up a story for whether just a one shot or maybe something bigger,
Yeah,
how
for
do you
sure.
make sure that you make a great, satisfying story while also respecting your players' choices,
Yes.
agency?
Yes, this is a very good question. And honestly, if we could reliably answer this question, we will have won D&D. Okay. Because you're absolutely right. Like the players need to have choices. They need to have meaningful choices and influence over the campaign, over the adventure. At the same time, they also want a satisfying ending that pays off elements that were set up earlier in the adventure. How do you do that? There is an unspoken social contract when players come into an adventure that has already been written. In other words, this isn't the DM just making stuff up for the game as they go 1 week at a time. This is the DM who has bought a book off the shelf. Okay, everybody, we're going to play Curse of Strahd, right? And you got this 225-page adventure, and we're going to play Curse of Strahd. Everyone buys into that. Everyone at the table should buy into that. And they have effectively bought a ticket for the ride. Okay. Now, Curse of Strahd has choices in it, and it has different outcomes, but it also has kind of choke points. It has particular moments where we know the players will do. We know the scenes when we know the characters will go through. How they get to that scene, that's a little fuzzy. There's more room for players to maneuver, right? But we know that eventually they will meet this guy in this bar and he will tell them his problem, right? And eventually they will get to the castle. And eventually they will get their fortune teller, they will get their fortunes read. And the fortune will tell them what they have to do to defeat Strahd. And you do that with cards, so that the outcome of the adventure is different every time because it depends on what card you drew that tells you what the players have to do to defeat Strahd, right? But you know that you will get to the castle and you will eventually confront Strahd. But how you wander the castle, where do you particularly go inside the castle, that's up to you, right? So there are these, imagine your adventure like a flow chart. And dungeons are basically flow charts. Do they go left and fight the orcs, or do they go right and eavesdrop on the dragon, right? But the players have bought the ticket. And so if everyone is on the same page, they understand not to just refuse to play the adventure, right? Like they're not going to just pull a hard left and derail the entire campaign and say, well, we don't want to go to Strahd. We want to go to some other, we want to investigate the other domains of dread. Strahd can go screw himself. Drink alone, buddy. And they just like leave the entire adventure and go off in another direction. Okay, they saw you buy the book. You told them we're playing Curse of Strahd. There is an unspoken agreement that they are in for the penny, in for the pound. In gaming, we often talk about this as a sandbox as opposed to a theme park. Now, the negative version of a theme park is people say that the adventure is a railroad, and that's kind of a negative term, and I try not to use it. But the idea of on a sandbox adventure, the players can go wherever they want, and they literally can do whatever. And there's not really a story except the story that the characters create as they travel from one space to the next. And there's a lot to love about a sandbox game, but most sandbox games are created at the table by a DM for the players at the table. A theme park is where you buy a ticket to play the adventure, and you're all piling onto the roller coaster and you're all riding together, right? And there's not really, you can't derail the roller coaster, right? But that's what you're here to do. You're here to play this adventure. So if you are writing an adventure for publication, you're writing a theme park adventure, probably. It might have a sandbox element to it, and Rime of the Frost Maiden is a good example of that sandbox element. If you know that adventure, there's 10 towns in Icewind Dale, and you can go to any of those 10 towns wherever you want to in any order, and they all have like a little first level, second level adventure, and they have a subplot, and you can kind of go wherever you want to until you explore all these 10 towns. And then each of those towns has little links to other towns, so you can kind of follow those leads. And then the sandbox gets bigger to like the area around the 10 towns. And that again is a sandbox. You can kind of go wherever you want to. And the adventure is designed that way. But then it leads you to this crashed Netheril city buried in a glacier. and now you're in a dungeon and it's a theme park. The sandbox goes away, right? Understand your players, and if you're writing an adventure for publication, there's gonna be a certain amount of guidance that we expect the players to do. That's okay. I think it's inevitable when you're writing an adventure for publication. So I hope this answer helped. I'm not sure it did, but I hope.
Thank you very much. And Professor Gibson and I are sitting here pointing at each other and giggling because Professor Gibson absolutely threw the roller coaster off the tracks when my
Okay.
D&D tried to play Strahd. We
Okay.
didn't finish.
Shame on you. Shame.
All right, so let's all give Jason Tondro a big thank you. But wait. Let's do it by throwing our hands in the air so we're not making it too loud for everybody.
All
Everybody
good.
throw your hands in the air.
Listen, it's a real privilege to speak to all of you. I'm so flattered. It's a privilege to be here. I want to thank Professor Einstein and everyone who's helped to make this happen. The game is pointless without players. Like, without you folks doing what you do, the game is just a book on a shelf. So we're deeply, deeply indebted to you and everything that you folks do. So thank you for having me, for allowing me to be here and speak with you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day, everyone. Good luck.